Okay, so we have a rail bridge shot. The cue ball is, anytime for me I measured it, it's like between 6 and 14 inches off the rail. I'm going to use what we call the closed hand rail bridge. And it's really important here, what you want to do is put the cue down on the table first, on the rail. And then keep the cue on the rail. So first put the cue on top of the rail. And now you're just going to form your bridge on top of that. You're not going to come up under here and lift the cue at all. So start out with the cue on the rail. Put your middle finger and your thumb next to the cue. And then this finger curls on top of it like that. So I don't know if you can bend your index finger backwards like that. It's like you're doing a fingerprint. You want that really tight, really solid. So, and now you can hit it real low if you want, or you can drop your back hand and hit it as high as you need to for a follow shot. Or you can hit center ball. Basically whatever you want to do, you can do that by controlling your back hand. And the whole time the cue just stays on the rail. Meanwhile, you don't want any play at all from side to side. So you squeeze it just enough so it doesn't move. So that one's about 6 inches off the rail. Here's 14. Now that's just what I came up with for myself. Once it gets beyond that, I don't really like to do this off the rail. What I'll do is I'll bring my hand down right over here, my closed hand bridge. And I don't want it too close, so instead of putting my palm down here, I'm going to keep my palm up here and just drop my fingers in. And I'm going to stay solid by actually putting my palm on the table in this case. You see how I can get a nice bridge here. This is a little too far for me. That's a nice distance here, and if I want I can get the stick right down by the rail or up a little bit higher like that. So once I'm in here, I don't like using the rail bridge inside of about 6 inches because I don't get much of a backswing. So I can actually do my closed hand bridge and pull back to here, control the height with my fingers. So now I have a nice backswing. I can pull all the way back to here again, as opposed to only right to here. And I'm real solid with my fingers in this case. Or I could have the same angle of the cue and use the open hand bridge either with my finger up or squeezing like that, which is actually really solid. Okay, may as well demonstrate one for you here. We'll put the cue down. Just like that. You see how this finger contained cue. So if I wanted to bend the cue even more, or if I was going to pull up more, the cue is going to bend because this finger is so solid right here. Right? Now if it just pops off, if I'm not that tight, that's what's going to happen. If I keep it tight, it's just real solid that way. And how I set up for that, I actually have this one ready in the air. I'll kind of hold the cue like that, and then I come down and just move my thumb out of the way as I'm coming down. So I don't actually do this and then put my hand on it. I'm all ready to go. And my feet are set, and I just come down into my stance. Land the bridge right on the table, just like that. And you don't want to be hanging over the side like that with your fingers kind of dangling over the edge, because you're not very solid right there. Okay, now so you can see from another angle. Here's the rail bridge. Now here's a case where I'm on my thumb right here. I'm starting out with my thumb underneath my hand, and I'm actually just going to be resting on my thumb. And that's going to be in between, like I said, about 6 and 14 inches. Now the cue is still on the rail, just my fingers and my thumb are there. That's what I used to use primarily. Now mainly I'm going to have my hand on the table. And we'd have more table here if it were a different brand. Most tables have a wider, or at least most professional tables. A lot of home tables have these thin rails here. So but it's really, really solid to put your hand there and your fingers. So one thing I like about this view is I want you to see not to hang your fingers off over the edge so much, unless you really want to. Then go ahead and grab on. Some players like doing that to grab. You'll feel it's pretty solid, but I'd say keep your fingers up on top of the rail and your hand, because you're going to feel that pressure down. Here you're losing some stability in your fingers, and I can't stress enough how important that is, having stability. So with this one, it looks about like that. Once the cue ball starts coming out here a little bit more, then I can start to get my whole hand on the table. As far as the close hand bridge, you can actually have your palm off the table even just a little bit. Even if you want to do a draw shot, you can have your palm off the table, just your fingers on the edge, and that's real nice if you can stay solid with that, because it really connects your arm from your shoulder all the way down to the tips of your fingers. Just depends on what you're comfortable with. There's a few other variations on the close hand bridge. You can have these fingers together, right, and that's really solid right in here. See how nice that is? Nice and solid. That's with that finger out. This one, for some reason, when you put that finger under here, this becomes really solid also, and you can adjust the height right there. Okay, now I'm going to show you a rail bridge that works good for the break, and it also works good for shots of different angles off the rail like this. So it kind of has the same idea as the rail bridge, where you put the cue stick on the rail. For the break, first I'll find my distance by holding the cue ball the same way. When it hits my hand, that's my distance. Then I can always make adjustments from there. So anyway, we have our cue ball there, and now the cue is going to be on the rail, again by these fingers right here, and I'm locking this finger in real tight. So on the break especially, I'm going to put a lot of weight into the back of my hand, way back here in my palm. I'm actually going to bend my elbow more, but see, this is going to be real solid right here. Okay, so that was a break bridge. Here we have a similar angled shot. See the bridge, how I land right into that bridge? Okay, and it stayed solid. I'll show you from the other side. Okay, so from the other side, whether it's a break or just you're making a shot, here's what it's going to look like. I see how I have these two fingers came down that way. They're on the table, nice and solid. My hand's on the rail. These two fingers are down there. And then these fingers are solid up here. And it doesn't move the whole time. So you can do that for the break shot as well. Okay, here's an interesting situation that comes up. The rail, to do the normal rail bridge like this, I'm just too far from the cue ball. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And then this feels too close, so you got to be creative in these spots. This is kind of one of those funny spots. Even that feels a little weird. So you might have to do something like this, where you hook that finger. See that? So I'm not way back here. But you might want to do that, and then just don't take a very long backswing. So let's see, if the ball's out here a little more. Now I'm out there a little more comfortable with my finger. So these, sometimes you might want to hook around, so you have a shot like this. Well, that's a lot easier in this case, see that? So you can see how you're going to have to adapt to the situation, especially around the rails. Okay, now I'm going to show you a great bridge for breaking from the table, from the bed of the table, which is great for playing 8-ball or 10-ball, which is real popular these days. So we have a rack of 8 ball, and what I want to do is put my weight onto this side of my hand, the back of my hand over here, and these 2 fingers, including my pinky. So I'm going to roll my hand over that way this time, and bend my elbow more than usual, and shoot slightly down onto the ball, although I don't want to shoot down too much, because I don't want to miss. I don't want to jump the ball too much. So when you break, keep your weight in your hand when you pull back, and as you go forward, push that weight up into the hand over here. See how it's on this side of my hand? I was talking earlier about the bridge, the close hand bridge, where you put both sides of the heel of your hand on the table, and how I think it's more solid. And it is a great playing bridge. However, for breaking from the bed of the table, this is a great bridge, and you can play with it too if you really like it. But you don't want to get too high unnecessarily with most of your shots. Okay, now I'll show you from this angle. Coming up on this side of my hand with my pinky and these 2 fingers, and really putting a lot of weight into my hand and keeping the weight there as I go forward. There we go. Okay, now the break is one of the only times where I look at the cue ball when I strike it. And part of the reason is because I'm actually transferring my weight forward, and it helps me get a more balanced and solid hit on the cue ball if I'm actually looking at the cue ball. It's kind of like golf. You're supposed to look at the ball as you're coming through, and you are transferring your weight. So it's good to be looking at what you're hitting. So in pool, that's what I'm going to do, especially from this bed of the table break. I'm going to line up coming down like this, make sure that I'm lined up perfectly, and then when I'm ready to hit the cue ball, keep my eyes on it, pull back, and then follow through. Give that a shot, and I think you'll like how solid you hit the ball. Alright, I have a helpful tip for you for bridging off the rail when the cue ball is frozen to the rail. You don't want to necessarily have a stroke that's perfectly level to the table, because your tip might glance off the cue ball. You don't have much cue ball to hit anyway. And if you're totally level, or even shooting up into the cue ball, there's a good chance you're going to miscue. So it's okay to shoot slightly down into this cue ball actually to get a little bit of a solid hit. You just don't want to come up too much to where you're going to masse it, unless you really have to elevate because you want to masse or you want to stop the cue ball. So a tip I have for you is to put pressure down on your wrist right here. The front part of your hand, press down on the cue, and then with your ring finger back here pull up, and that'll put pressure down on the cue. So when you go through the cue ball, the cue wants to stay going down instead of popping up for a miscue. So it'll look like this. You might not even be able to see it, but putting pressure down in the front of my cue, and my cue was nice and solid all the way through that cue ball. Okay, now some of you probably want to learn how to use the mechanical bridge. It's also called the rake or the granny or the crutch. And when you can't reach the shot, that's when you pull this baby out. And basically you want it to be solid like your bridge hand. So what you do is you hold it solid. If you're right-handed with your left hand out here, you want to get control of it and stand on the stroking line, so the cue is going to be directly out in front of you on the stroking line. And then you hold it off to the side like this and press down on the table. Press it down on the table. Back here you can hold it with your thumb and your front 2 fingers, hold the cue, or you can put all 4 fingers on top. But basically you're going to be looking down the stroking line, and you hold your elbow out here like this. So you just try to give it a straight stroke as possible. And be careful not to do that. So if you want, you can do kind of like a circular motion. Kind of like that. So basically you can just shoot a few racks until you get the hang of it. And it'll come in handy for sure. But I would also recommend learning how to play opposite-handed. That'll come in handy too. I think you'll get a lot more touch. But you know, it's a necessary evil to bridge. You're going to want to use it. So just practice a few racks. Or even practice for a whole day with the bridge. Okay, now I'm just going to go through some bridges so you get a closer look. Here's my closed hand bridge. See how tight the thumb is. And then this finger is really tight. Both sides of the heel of my hand are on the table. My fingers are all down real tight. If I wanted, I could have my hand slightly off or elevated. This could be looped like that from this angle. Could have that finger up, could have that finger underneath over here. From over here it looks like this. Here would be the elevated version. Alright, now here's open hand bridge. The one I like is with the thumb down like that. So you can change your elevation also. And then with your backhand moving up and down, you can pretty much hit the cue ball wherever you want as well. So you have total versatility with your bridge hand in creating ideal contact for the cue ball. Alright, so I hope that helps. Okay, so here's my closed hand bridge. Now if you want, you could come over like this to where you're on the outside of your hand, back here, and then really solid on those fingers and solid up here on your pinky. So if that's more comfortable. But I would try getting that down. You can kind of see how nice and solid it is. And you'll actually feel a difference in your arm and the whole solidity of your stance when you do that, when you bring the entire back side of your hand down onto the table. This one is great because your fingers are totally connected, and that'll tend to make sure that your entire arm is connected as well. You'll feel that.